if you're curious about the culinary and medicinal uses of Anise Hyssop, I'm going to be sharing that and more in this video. Hi, my name is Landon Gilfillan with Pepper and Pine Garden Design, and I'm sitting in front of my small little medicinal herb garden that I planted this year. And it is just full of flowers and colors and beauty and pollinators, and I have been harvesting from this regularly. And today I want to share with you how I'm going to be harvesting from this beautiful plant right here, Anise Hyssop, and how I plan on using it in my home and with my family. The Latin word for Anise Hyssop is Agastache foeniculum, if I'm saying that correctly. I'm sure I'm not. And it is a part of the mint family, along with mint and lemon balm and so many other plants, Nepeta, that are part of the mint family. And so like mint, this plant can get really prolific. It's a lot taller than your typical mint. This plant right now is probably upwards of almost 4 feet. And it's just in the past week bloom these really beautiful purple lavender flowers, which I'll zoom in here on a minute. And the bees are having a heyday on this plant back here. So I'm so excited to be harvesting, in particular, the leaves, which have the most potent medicinal uses, but you can also harvest these flowers. Now, Anise Hyssop, like mint, is a perennial herb. It will come back with fervor every year. So you want to take that into consideration whenever you're planting it in the garden. You want to plant it in a place where it has room to grow both out and up. Like I said, this one is about 4 feet tall. There are 2 plants here and they can get about 3 feet wide. So I suggest planting them at least 12 inches apart in your garden, if not a little bit more. And just know that they will have a spreading capability. Although I will say it doesn't seem to be as mighty as a mint's ability to spread, but just know that Anise does have that capability similar to other mint family herbs. Now, Anise Hyssop, if you've heard of star anise, Anise Hyssop has a slight licorice flavor to it, so it can be used both in savory dishes and sweet dishes. You can use the leaves to kind of spruce up a salad and give it a little bit different zing, I think is what I like to think of it. It grows really well with salmon and chicken and other fish dishes. And you can use it as a substitute for herbs, fennel, anise, chevril, and tarragon. And I like to remember that by using the acronym FACT. Fennel, anise, chevril, and tarragon. It has that licorice type flavor and can be a substitute for any of those herbs. The leaves tend to have a more potent licorice flavor, but the flowers can be used as well. They're just not as strong. So if you don't like that really strong licorice flavor, then harvest the flowers. They're lovely and you can use them in a tea or in a salad as well. So those are sort of the culinary uses. You can also use the seeds of the Anise Hyssop in things like breads and cookies. They have that kind of sweet licorice flavor, so you can use them in those dishes. And you can grind up the leaves, especially particularly the dry ones, and use those in recipes that you would use them in too. Just a unique spin on some of your ordinary recipes. If you think about the plants that are in the mint family, like I said, mint, lemon balm, and Anise Hyssop, they have qualities, similar qualities, although some tend to favor one area maybe stronger than the other. But Anise Hyssop has that menthol quality to it. It has a specific oil in it called mentholuginol, I believe is what it is, and that has a sedative property about it. So if you know anything about mint and lemon balm, those are great teas to drink at night when you're calming down, or if you have any sort of issues with anxiety. It helps bring that sort of peaceful, has that peaceful quality about it. And the same goes for Anise Hyssop as well. And along with that sedative property, it's great for relieving digestive issues, calming down those spasms that you might experience in the digestive tract, calming down and just maintaining your digestive health in general. It's also known to be really helpful in treating diarrhea, specifically when used as a tea or a tea infusion. It also can prevent gas and bloating. And again, I like to think as peppermint as my go-to herb whenever my child is having any sort of digestive issues, but just know that Anise Hyssop can also address those issues as well. And you might pair the two together and get a really unique flavor. So play around with them. If you have this in your garden as an ornamental, just know it can be used for the things that I'm mentioning as well. Anise Hyssop also has antibacterial and antiviral properties. And one great way to use these leaves is in a poultice or in a salve. So a poultice would be the actual leaves kind of chopped up and mushed into paste. That's the word, like a wet paste. And you can place that on top of your skin. If you have a cut or a scrape or a sunburn or a bug bite, anything that is inflamed, it has that anti-inflammatory property that would help to calm that down. It's great to put in a nice warm to hot bath to help with sunburn and poison ivy and any sort of itchy skin issue. So just remember, anti-inflammatory and antiviral. It's also known to help with fungal issues such as athlete's foot or yeast overgrowth. So anything along those antifungal lines, you can also make an anise salve or poultice or put it in the bath and use it in those ways to address those issues. A salve is something that's more like a butter, like a skin butter. You take an infused oil of anise hyssop and you turn it into that sort of skin butter and wipe it on the skin like an oil or a cream. It can address similar the issues that I've just mentioned. Anise hyssop is also a diaphoretic. If you know that term, it means it induces perspiration. So why would you want to induce perspiration? Well, that is something that's really helpful when you're dealing with fever. So if you have a child that has a fever, a great thing to give them is anise hyssop and the other herbs that are known as a diaphoretic to induce that perspiration. And what it does is it draws out the fever. It can help draw out whatever it is that's causing the fever. Instead of just putting a Band-Aid on it with ibuprofen or Tylenol, you're actually helping to relieve what is going on inside the body, and anise hyssop is great for that, along with those antiviral and anti-inflammatory properties. Another great use for anise hyssop, it has respiratory benefits. So it helps relieve congestion. You can drink it as a hot infusion or tea using dried or fresh leaves. You can put a cold poultice or a warm poultice on the chest and leave it on there. Maybe put a towel or a tea cloth over there and leave it on for 15-20 minutes, whatever seems helpful. That helps to relieve congestion. It's extremely effective for cough and cold and flu season. If you've got that cough, drinking it as a tea on a regular basis, having 1 cup of tea is not going to be enough. Having a cup of tea every couple of hours or putting it on as a poultice will help to relieve that cough and that congestion and those cold symptoms that you experience, especially in the winter or even in the summer, whether it's due to allergies or a summer cold. Anise hyssop is great to help relieve those symptoms. Along with the menthol properties that I mentioned earlier, that menthol luginol oil, that is the main oil that's in anise hyssop, when this is combined with licorice, actually, I have licorice root that I keep in my cupboard for whenever sickness has come along, but anise hyssop combined with licorice is actually great for a different more severe lung conditions such as bronchitis and respiratory infections. Combine those two together in a tea or a poultice and you'll have a really powerful thing that you can give your family that is also super safe. It's known as a pectoral herb. So pectoral here, your chest. So that's what it's addressing when you hear pectoral. It can also be used as an expectorant. I mentioned that it's good as a cough suppressant, but it is also an expectorant. So keep in mind those respiratory ailments that anise hyssop is really great at. And that menthol property from that menthol luginol oil will help to open the airways, relieve the congestion, help with the coughing and all those things that you experience, especially during the winter. So the main properties that you want to remember with anise hyssop is antiviral, anti-inflammatory, expectorant, diaphoretic, pectoral. Those are words that are associated with Anise hyssop and have been shown to be properties of this wonderful herb. And one other thing I should mention is just the smell of Anise hyssop, whether you're brewing it in a tea or using the oil in a diffuser, is a very uplifting fragrance. So especially in the winter when you're feeling those winter blues, or just in general, you can use it as an uplifting fragrance and herb to help with depression, anxiety, or anything along those lines. So let's talk about how to harvest and use this herb. So here is my medicinal herb garden. I've got amaranth, comfrey, black-eyed Susan, daisies. I've got coneflowers here, basil, feverfew, and yarrow, bee balm that's about to explode. And here is the Anise hyssop here with these beautiful lavender plumes, as I like to say. So there's different ways that you can harvest this plant. It is said that it's best to harvest the leaves right before the flower blooms, because that's when they're most potent, but you can absolutely harvest these leaves even after the flower has bloomed. And generally you want to start at the bottom of the plant. However, in this particular instance, I am noticing this sort of spotted discoloration on these leaves. I'm not entirely sure what that's from. It's not a fungus. It's not mildew. It may just be discoloration because they're older leaves. So I'm going to steer away from these since I'm not entirely sure what's going on here. And I'm going to go for leaves that are more along these lines right here. So this is what the Anise hyssop leaf looks like. And you can absolutely cut the plant about 4 or 5 inches from the bottom and then hang the entire stem upside down somewhere in your house to dry. And I might do that, but then I would have to come in here and clip off these leaves that are kind of looking questionable. And I don't know that I necessarily want to take the time to do that. So I am going to come in here and just pull off these really nice, healthy looking leaves. And I will take them inside. I'm going to put them on a cookie sheet with some wax paper and set them in my oven with the pilot light on to help them dry quicker. Usually I set them on my countertop and cover them with a tea towel to keep light and air from getting to them. But I found another great way to dry these herbs safely is to put them in my oven with the pilot light on. When you're harvesting most herbs, you can know that you can generally cut the stem right here at this point where you see these other little small baby leaves starting to come in. This is the case with basil and so many other herbs, that they have this little crux right here where you can cut this plant, and what you're doing is you're actually encouraging the plant to become more bushy and less just vertical and upright. And I'll show you here on this basil plant, that's how I've been pruning this one back, is I'll come in here and I will cut back to this point right here. And I can't use my fingernail right there. And what it's doing is it not only taking off the flowers, so it will continue to grow and not just go to seed, but it's going to cause this whole plant just to continue to grow bushier and bushier. And I'll get so much more basil off of it by doing that. So you can do the same thing with Anise hyssop. It has almost the exact same stem formation with these coming out here in the central stem, and I can just prune it right here and know that this will grow some more leaves and cause it to become bushier over the season. Or like I mentioned, you can just come in and clip the single leaves like so. You can also clip the flowers, and what I like to do if I'm getting the flowers, although I like to leave most of them because they're so beautiful and they bring in the bees and they're less potent than the leaves. So I might use a couple of the flowers just to put on a salad or something along those lines. But for the most part, I'm going to leave the flowers intact. But if I did want to harvest them, I would just come right here above where the next set of leaves are growing in and then just clip it. And it fell down into the plant. I don't know where it went. I'm also going to remove any leaves that look like this. I'm fairly certain this is due to Japanese beetle damage. I've been seeing those on various plants in my garden. So I'm going to pull any leaves off that look like this because they're not aiding the plant in any way, shape, or form. So go ahead and compost those and make sure you're harvesting the leaves that look the cleanest. And as with any plant that you're harvesting from, you really don't want to prune more than 30% of the plant because it'll really stress it out. And even though Anise hyssop is a really hardy plant, it does really well in a lot of conditions. It can tolerate heat and drought and a lot of other conditions. You don't want to overstress the plant by pruning it back too much. So that's another reason why I don't want to go in there and cut a bunch of the stems out because this is this plant's first year in this garden. So I am just going to harvest the leaves. And then the following years, I know I'll have more growth where I can really harvest those stems when they're at their primo condition. So go find yourself some Anise Hyssop. If you haven't grown it, you can grow it from seed. I actually ordered this as a start from Azure Standard this year. They had some great deals on some of these medicinal herbs that I wasn't able to start from seed this year. So that's another place that you can look around, or any local nursery. But they're a super easy plant to grow and they're beautiful in the garden. So go grow you some Anise Hyssop, and definitely, if you do, try to use those leaves for some really helpful and medicinal properties in your house, if nothing else, for a really yummy and soothing cup of tea. If this video has been helpful to you at all, consider subscribing to my channel or sharing it with someone that you think it might be helpful for. And as always, my name is Landon Gilfillan here at Pepper and Pine Garden Design, growing gardeners and their gardens, and I'll see you in the next video.